We are now at our part 5. So let's have a look at part 5. And we're going to tarry a bit longer in part 5 because the subject matter here is the one to my mind that's most important for you. Why most important for you? Because this refers to fact-centered questions. Fact-centered questions generally are classified into 3. Let's go back. Why did I think fact-centered questions are important? Because here, 80 to 90% of all of our questions, sometimes even 100%, are generally fact-centered questions. There's a storyline. Well, it is true that they are all fact-centered questions. I suggest that we classify them into 3 so we would know how to attack them. First, you have those which indicate the general direction of the answer. And here, as you would notice in our discussion, the question itself points to you how you're going to answer the question. And then you have those that give general directions only. And the problem here is that after reading the question at the bottom, you will keep on going back and then role playing. So with that out of the way, let's look at fact-centered questions and see how we're going to address them. First, you have fact-centered questions which indicate the general direction of the answer. As we said a while ago, just by looking at the question, you would know how to answer already. So what's the procedure for analysis in this regard? First, read the question at the bottom of the problem. However, this advice that I give concerns only questions that are more than one paragraph. Why do I suggest it to be done if it's long? Because if it is long, as I've shown to you before, by the time you reach the bottom, you would have forgotten everything already. So you have to go back again and reread. But if you read the question at the bottom, you would know what the examiner wants. And therefore, as you are reading the problem, you're already solving the answer. But if it is short, it's a waste of time to go to the bottom to look at the question. Then read the problem bearing in mind what the examiner wants as shown at the bottom of the problem. So in short, you're already answering the question while you are reading the facts. Why should you read the question first? Spouses Constantino and Karina are Filipino citizens and are principal shareholders of a restaurant chain, Karina's Inc. The restaurant's principal office is in Makati City, Philippines. Karina's became so popular as a Philippine restaurant that the owners in 2020 alone, it opened 10 stores throughout North America and 5 stores in various parts of Europe, where there were large Filipino communities. This store abroad was in the name of a corporation organized under the laws of the state or country in which the store was located. All stores had identical capital structures. 60% of the outstanding shares was owned by Karina Incorporated, while the remaining 40% was owned directly by the spouses, Constantino and Karina. Beginning 2017, in the light of the immigration policy initiated by Vice President Donald Trump, many Filipinos have since returned to the Philippines and the number of Filipino immigrants in the U.S. dropped significantly. On account of these developments, Constantino and Karina decided to sell the shares of stock in the 5 years corporation that were doing poorly in gross sales. The spouse's lawyer friend advised them that they will be taxed 5% on the first 100,000 net capital gain and 10% on the net capital gain in excess of the 100,000. By the way, to my mind, the question is erroneous. Why so? Because currently, the rate now is 15% of net capital gains when you talk about shares of stocks that are not listed or traded in the stock exchange. Is the lawyer correct? If not, how should the spouses continue Karina be taxed on the sale of their shares? Notice the question is very, very long. But if you go at once at the bottom of the problem, you would know again what is the issue involved. Like for example, is the lawyer correct? You wouldn't know, so you go back one sentence. If not, how should the spouses consider Karina be taxed on the sale of their shares? Notice the second question points to the direction on how you're going to answer the first. Because decidedly, when you see the question, if not, then the mind of the examiner is that They are not going to be taxed in accordance with the advice of the lawyer firm. What are the usual questions at the bottom of the problem? Was the consultation of Maria without Evangeline considered privileged? Does the tender offer apply in this case? Whether there's been indirect acquisition of the shareholdings in its company by Chico discussed? Does the trial court have a reason to deny the motion? Explain the answer. I did not anymore state yes the questions in 2017, in 2018 and 2019, but there are. Then identify the possible, identify the relevant facts. Identify the issues raised by relevant facts in the light of the question raised at the bottom of the problem. Recall the correct legal rule to apply to the legally relevant fact in the resolution of the issue. Visualize the letter of the answer. Begin the answer with conclusion if warranted. Reason out your answer to matching of the key facts with each element of the legal rule. Now, this is interweaving. And I'll go slowly when we talk about interweaving, especially the concept of set theory. If appropriate and time is available, add your legal reasoning to the use of applicable legal policy and principles. Then review your answer for missing words, misspelled words, and grammatical errors. Right? What is the outline of an ideal answer? Remember here, we're talking about an ideal answer. And the ideal answer might not be a realistic answer. So keep that in mind. So, another thing I would like to keep in mind is that if the subject weight is 5% and below, then you use the realistic answer. If it's more than 5%, then use the outline of the ideal answer. What is the outline of the ideal answer? First, you have a conclusion. Even if it's only one word or one sentence, then separate it by paragraph with the second paragraph, which is the concise statement of the black letter rule. But what is the black letter rule? The black letter rule is the essence of the law, is the essence of jurisprudence. And why is it referred to as the black letter rule? It is referred to as the black letter rule because when you look at the books, when you look at the text, when you look at the reviewers, the essence of jurisprudence, the essence of the law, are normally in bold letters. That's why they're referred to as the black letter rule. And then you have the third paragraph, which is interweaving between the elements of the fact and the elements of the law. And then you have your fourth paragraph. That is, if there's time, explain policy principles behind the law. And then if you still have time and the answer is lengthy, you must reconclude. But be careful when you reconclude. Your reconclusion in the fifth paragraph must not collide with your conclusion in the first paragraph. Otherwise, you're not going to have an answer. We just finished talking about the ideal answer, which we said should be used only in the instance where you have a more than 5% weight of question. Now talk about the outline of a realistic answer, which we think is more often than not one that might be used in answering bar problems, because the weight of most bar problems are between 5 and less, 5 and 1. So here you have a conclusion and then you immediately interweave. You don't have to restate anymore the black letter rule. You interweave immediately. And therefore, at the most, you should have 3 to 5 sentences only. So remember, I said the essence of this area is interweaving, and we'll have to look at examples on how we're going to interweave in a little while. So let's look at examples of fact-centered questions which indicate the general direction of the answer. Let's go back. Remember, in this particular case, as I mentioned to you a while ago, the questions themselves points to you on how you're going to answer or how you're going to analyze. So let's look at this illustration here. In January 1970, Juan Gonzalez bought 1 hectare of agricultural land in Laguna for 100,000. This property has a current market value of 10 million in view of the construction of the concrete road traversing the property. Juan Gonzalez agreed to exchange his agricultural land in Laguna for a 1/2 hectare residential property located in Batangas with a fair market value of 10 million owned by Alpha Corporation a domestic corporation engaged in the purchase and sale of real property. Alpha Corporation acquired the property in 2007 for $9 million. Is Juan Gonzalez subject to income tax on the exchange of property? If so, what is the tax base and rate? You notice the follow-up question. If so, what is the tax base and rate? Points the direction on how we're going to answer here. So technically, you're talking about the tax base and on exchange of property. The same thing is true also when you look at question C. Is Alpha Corporation subject to income tax on the exchange of property? If so, what is the tax base and rate? Let's look at the complicated theory. But to my mind, it is very simple. Don't be afraid of the mathematics here. Don't mind the mathematics. What you should mind is the logic. Because a theory is technically logical reasoning. And probably some of you would recall during your younger years when you're probably grade 2 up to grade 5 that you were taught set theory, but you've forgotten all about it. Because your teacher didn't tell you what is the importance of set theory. Why do you have to study set theory? And therefore, let's look at the symbols with regard to set theory for you to be able to familiarize yourself with it. So perhaps this is familiar. You have two circles intersecting one another. So let's look at the mathematical formulation. But as I said, don't mind the mathematics. So you have bijection, which is used for analysis. So when you look at this, it seems to be very complicated. A function is A 1 to 1 and to B is a bijection where y equals a function of x. Don't mind that. Instead, you look at the symbol. And therefore here, A would be the factor elements and B would be the legal elements. You would notice that there is a one-to-one correspondence between the factual elements and the legal elements. In short, all the legal elements have factual equivalence. And therefore, if that is so, then the law finds application because there is bijection. But do not write there is bijection. Instead, you're going to explain why in fact there is a one-to-one correspondence between the legal elements and the factual elements. In short, when you interweave, you join together the legal elements. Each legal element should have a factual equivalent insofar as the factual elements are concerned. So here, you have B, the legal elements, with a factual equivalence. Each of the elements will be, in technical terms, one-to-one correspondence. But you didn't use the word one-to-one correspondence because that is a mathematical term. To repeat, you are going to interweave by joining together the elements of the law and the factual elements. So that's how we're going to use bijection for analysis. So we're going to look into the problem and try to recall the legal elements and find out whether in fact there is a one-to-one correspondence, and if so, then the law that you've recalled finds application. So let's have an illustrative question, which is a short one, given in 1976. So here, I'll go slowly, and we're going to explain for you the meaning of the one-to-one correspondence. Be patient, because it is the only way that you could reason out. Unfortunately, this is not taught in law school. X found in the street a bag containing the amount of 20,000 pesos. Did he report his findings of the money to the proper authorities? Nor did he return the same to the owner whose address inscribed in the bag containing the money for his benefit? What crime has X committed? Reasons. So here, you are not sure what he has committed. But when you look at the factual setting, legal elements of a certain law finds application already. So let's find out how. So, what are the legal elements? Any person who, having found lost property, shall fail to deliver the same to the local authorities or to the owner is guilty of theft. Notice that's Article 308 of the Revised Penal Code. So therefore, having recalled the legal elements here of theft, what you do would be to look for the factual equivalence in the problem. If there's a one-to-one correspondence, meaning to say all the legal elements would have factual equivalence, then there is theft. And the crime committed is theft. So let's see. Let's look now for the factual equivalence. Let's go back to the problem and look at it. What are the factual equivalents? X found a bag containing 20,000. He did not report his finding of the money to the proper authorities or to the owner. Instead, he used the money for his own benefit. But how do you interweave? We said interweaving, you have the legal elements, and you must be able now to match it with the factual equivalence. If there's a match, then the law finds application. Let's see. The legal element is any person. Factual equivalent X. Who having found lost property, legal element, factual equivalent, found a bag containing 20,000 pesos. Now, shall fail to deliver the same to the local authorities. That's another legal element. And what is the factual equivalent? X, in fact, did not report his finding of the money to the proper authorities, or shall fail to return the same to the owner, legal element, nor did he return the same to the owner. So you notice there is a match when you have interwoven. So there's here an instance where the legal elements correspond with the factual equivalence, and therefore the crime of theft is committed. So how are we going to craft our answer then? Remember, this is the analysis and not the answer. But you must do this very fast. And remember again, you must keep on practicing in order to own this manner of analysis. So repeat, you must internalize in yourselves how you're going to use this matter of interweaving. So, answer will be, start with the conclusion and then you immediately interweave. X has committed theft, period. Paragraph. Theft may be committed by one who, like X, so you done together, has found personal property, shall fail to deliver the same to the proper authorities or to its owner, period. Oh, two-sentence answer, perfect answer because of interweaving. So we'll have a look at other instances on how we're going to interweave, but let me repeat, this is the essence again of legal reasoning, which was never taught in law school, and therefore you must now learn and internalize how you're going to do it. So instead, he used the money for his own benefit, and therefore, supposing there is no bijection, what do you understand when you say there's no bijection? Here, by looking at the drawing, you would notice that you have the legal elements, and one of the legal elements doesn't have a factual equivalent. So look at this. So therefore, the law does not apply. And we're going to have another example here, this time in the field of taxation. But let me repeat, this finds application in all the bar subjects, from political law to ethics. This finds application so long as it is a fact-centered problem, asking you, trying to determine from you whether you know the law and how to apply the law. So remember, there is bijection, there's no bijection. But do not write bijection, do not write there's no bijection, because these are mathematical terms. Instead, what you could do would be to use the term interweaving. But when you interweave, you must join them together, and you must know how to join them together. So, if there's no bijection, the only thing you have to do is try to find out what is the legal element that does have a factual equivalent. So let's have a look at a more complicated one here. We have finished the discussion of the instance where there is bijection or there is a one-to-one correspondence between the elements of the law and the elements of the fact. And that brings us to the matter here, that there are certain areas that you must master the elements. And as I said, not all areas are given in the bar. And it's important you must know elements, because without the knowledge of elements, you will not be able to answer a single question. So, but again, somebody must tell you what are the areas where you have to master the elements. That is why in my other uploads on the substantive subjects, you would note that I have a 3-star, I have a 2-star, I have a 1-star. So those marked with 3 stars and 2 stars are the ones that are utmost importance. You must master them, you must remember them, you must internalize them. Otherwise, you will not be able to answer a bar question. But again, let me repeat, it is impossible for you to have a look at all subjects, all concepts, so you must be selective in your reading. Now, we go to the area where there's no one-to-one correspondence between the elements of the law and the elements of the fact, which is that one of the legal elements does not have a factual equivalent. So with that out of the way, let's have a look at another bar question where we could use as a sample for analysis. Now, take note, this is very, very complicated, but this requires, again, knowledge of the elements. Here you will find out that one of the legal elements does not have a factual equivalent. That is why the law does not apply. But just the same, let's have a look at it. When you look at the question and the factual setting is very long, you got once at the bottom of the problem. So what is that? Decide. You don't know what you're going to decide. So you go back here, one sentence. As a result, on August 5, 2018, the BR issued a deficiency income tax assessment against ACO. ACO protested the assessment on the ground that it has prescribed. So here, you immediately call the law involved. And what's the law? The law involved here is the law on assessment and protest of assessment. In short, whether or not there is prescription that was set in. So once you have recalled that, everything would be easy because we have to lay out the elements of the law and then you try to find out what are the factual equivalents. So with that out of the way, since we know what the exam is talking about, what he wants is basically prescription of assessment, then we now go and have a look at the factual setting, and at the same time, we're really trying to solve the problem. So let's see. ACO, a Philippine corporation, filed its 2015 income tax return on April 15, 2016, showing a net loss. So it filed the ITR on April 15, 2016. Since this is prescription, what should come to your mind? What should come to your mind is that, what is the importance of X having filed, ACO having filed on April 15, 2016? Now, the important thing to remember here is that the Bureau of Internal Revenue has a period of 3 years from the time the return was filed, or should have been filed, whichever is the latter of the two. Here you would note that the corporation probably is using the calendar year and not the fiscal year, and therefore it should file its tax return no later than April 15 of 2016. And therefore the Bureau of Internal Revenue has a period of 3 years from April 15, 2016, within which to issue an assessment notice, and consequently, the period of prescription, universal accounting, 2017, 2018, 2019, is April 16 and up to 2019. Now, there's another factual issue here that you must take note of. On November 10, 2016, it amended its 2015 ITR to show more losses. What is the effect of that? The effect of that is that, you try to recall a concept. The concept that you should recall is that the taxpayer could file an amended return provided there's no tax investigation yet. And therefore, it is as if the tax return filed on April 15, 2016 was in fact filed on November 10, 2016. And therefore, the period of prescription is 3 years from November 10, 2016 or November 11, 2019. After the tax investigation, the BIA disallowed certain deductions claimed by ACO, putting ACO in a net income position. As a result, on August 5, 2018, the BIA issued a deficiency income tax assessment against ACO. Now remember, the Bureau of Internal Revenue has up to November 16, within which to issue an assessment notice. Now let's see. Let's look at the law now and let's interview. First, let's now show to you what I stated a while ago, because you might have followed me because I must have talked too fast. So let's see. What is the prescriptive period for issuance of assessment notice? So let's look at time, supposing this is time. And you have here a filing date, as we said a while ago. Since presumably A corporation was using the calendar year, then it should file its tax return no later than April 15. So, if when does the tier prescriptive period start to run? It starts to run from the time the return was filed or should have been filed, whichever is the later of the two. If there's an amendment, then the date of amendment is considered as the time for filing the return. So therefore, let's look at this example now, and let's have a crazy example. Supposing you have a taxpayer who loves his government so much that he makes it a point to always file his tax return on February 14. He makes his government his Valentine. And therefore, when do you start counting the 2 years? It is completed 3 years from the time the return was filed on February 14 or should have been filed on April 15. So that's counting from April 15. On the other hand, supposing that you have a taxpayer who hates his government, he makes it a point always to file his tax return on November 1. Why November 1? Why did he choose November 1? Because according to him, our initial of the Republic of the Philippines is RP. The only thing lacking is I, and all of us will be dead. So, in that case, when should you start counting the prescriptive period? 3 years from the time the return was filed on November 1, or should have been filed on April 15, whichever the letter, instead of November 1 is the letter date, then start counting from November 1, assuming of course that November 1 is not a holiday. So, but if there's an amended return, then the date of filing the amended return is the one you're going to use. And you now know that if the amended return was made before the filing date, then it should be the filing date. I should consider as the date of computation. If filed after the filing date, then it should be computed on the date of filing the amended return. So with that out of the way, let's now have a look at the legal elements. Legal elements, huh? Because as you said, you must know the legal elements involving prescription because the issue is prescription. So, the return is amended. Amendment is substantially different from original return. Then the prescriptive period shall be counted from the filing of the amended return and at the date when the original return was filed. That is the law. So, assessment will be made not less than 3 years from the filing of the amended return. And what are the factual equivalents? So you now have the legal elements. As we said before, if all the legal elements were the factual equivalents, then it has prescribed. The law on prescription applies. Upon the other hand, if you find out that one of the legal elements does not have a factual equivalent, then the law does not apply. In short, prescription has not yet set in. So let's look at the factual elements before we intervene. So, original return filed on April 15, 2016. Amended substantially on November 10, 2016 by showing more losses. Assessment made on August 5, 2018. So, those are the facts. Let's match them up. Let's interweave to find out whether or not prescription has set in and the buyer now is precluded from issuing an assessment notice. So, interweaving. So, law interwoven with facts. So, if there's a legal element does not have a factual equivalent, then the law does not apply. In short here, we talk about the elements of prescription. And therefore, if one of the elements of prescription does not have a factual equivalent, then here, prescription does not apply. On the other hand, if all the legal elements were the factual equivalents, then prescription applies. So substantial amendments showing more losses, prescriptive period counted from filing of the amended return filed on November 10, 2016. So therefore, you start counting your period from November 10, 2016. But assessment therefore should be made not later than 3 years from the filing of the amended return on November 10, 2016 or November 11, 2019. In short, the Bureau of Internal Revenue has up to November 11, 2019 within which to make an assessment. But what is another thing that you find here? The assessment was made on August 5, 2018 or before November 11, 2019. And therefore, what is your conclusion? Your conclusion is that protest denied. So your answer must be direct to the point. But we said you must now interweave in order to have an answer showing that you know how to apply the law to a given factual situation. How do you do that? So, the return was substantially amended, as in this case, on November 10, 2016, the 3-year prescriptive period for issuance of an assessment notice is computed from the filing of the amended return. Thus, the BR has up to November 11, 2019 within which to issue an assessment notice, and what the Bureau conclusion, the assessment made on August 5, 2018 was within the prescriptive period. Remember, to own this, you must do practical exercises. When answering and analyzing MACBAR problems, this is the method of analysis you're going to use. But very importantly, it's important that you must remember the elements of the law. You don't recall the elements of the law, then you are dead. But again, we said, you don't have to know all the elements of all the different concepts in law. The elements you must remember are only the elements that are usually asked in the bar exams. And how do you know that? You know that by adverting again to history. As explained when we're talking about effective bar review methods, and as I'll explain continuously as I discuss the different substantive subjects. So that's the end of part 5, analytical techniques for fact-centered questions. And as usual, let's now have our break. We'll have our merienda. Let's enjoy our merienda. And while enjoying our merienda, we take a break. And we shall take up part 6, continuation of analytical techniques for fact-centered questions, looking at other illustrations in order to frame into your mind exactly how you're going to analyze problems. So, enjoy.